I'll destroy you, both of you. Craig Sanders' voice echoed through the marble lobby as security pinned his arms behind his back. His perfect hair disheveled, spittle flying from his lips, eyes wild with rage. You think this is over? I made this firm. I know where the bodies are buried. My wife Melanie stood beside me, unflinching as the man who had tormented her for months unraveled completely. The iconic New York attorney, whose face had graced legal magazines and cable news shows, was being dragged out of Blackwell, Harding, and Pierce like a common criminal. You, he screamed when he spotted us, lunging forward so violently that it took 2 guards to restrain him. You think you're so clever with your videos? Your anonymous testimonies? I know it was you. Mel squeezed my hand but didn't break eye contact with him. Goodbye, Craig, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor I could feel in her fingers. I hope you find the help you need. That only enraged him more. Help? I need help, he laughed maniacally. When I'm done with you, you'll be lucky to get a job as a public defender in the Bronx. As the elevator doors closed on his reddened face, a bizarre silence fell over the marble lobby. Partners, associates, and staff who had witnessed the spectacle stood frozen, smartphones discreetly capturing the downfall of New York's most notorious legal rainmaker. I looked at Mel. You okay? Her professional mask slipped just enough for me to see the mixture of relief, vindication, and lingering fear beneath. I will be, she whispered, then straightening her shoulders and adjusting her perfectly tailored blazer. Let's get out of here. As we pushed through the revolving doors into the harsh midday light of Madison Avenue, I couldn't help thinking how quickly everything had fallen apart for Sanders. 3 weeks ago, he'd been untouchable. Now he couldn't even control himself, let alone my wife's career. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to know how we got here, how the most powerful attorney in Manhattan ended up being escorted from his own firm, screaming threats and conspiracy theories. It all started with a text message that pushed things too far. Mel had been at Blackwell, Harding, and Pierce for almost a year, a prestigious position she'd earned by graduating top of her class at Columbia Law. She was brilliant, methodical, and utterly dedicated to the law. Not the kind of woman who makes waves or draws attention to herself. So when she came home one Tuesday night and headed straight for our liquor cabinet instead of changing out of her work clothes, I knew something was seriously wrong. Sanders? I asked as she poured herself a double shot of bourbon. She nodded, threw back the entire drink, then immediately poured another. He cornered me in the file room today, she said, her voice tight. Told me he'd been watching me and liked what he saw. Not my legal work, me. My stomach clenched. What exactly did he say? He said, and I'm quoting here, "That skirt does amazing things for your ass, counselor." Her hand shook slightly as she raised the glass to her lips. Then he stood between me and the door and asked if I'd considered what it would take to fast-track my career at Blackwell. Jesus Christ, Mel, that's sexual harassment? She laughed bitterly. Obviously, but it's also my word against Craig Sanders, the firm's biggest rainmaker, Harvard Law Review, friend to judges and politicians, regular commentator on CNN. For those who don't follow the legal world, Craig Sanders was a legend, a ruthless litigator with a perfect courtroom record, known for his devastating cross-examinations and multi-million-dollar settlements. His client list included Fortune 500 CEOs, Hollywood stars, and at least one former president. At 45, he was the youngest senior partner in the firm's 112-year history. Has he done this before? I asked, already knowing the answer. According to office gossip, I'm not even his first victim this year. Mel sank onto our couch, suddenly looking exhausted. His last associate, Jennifer, transferred to the Boston office after working with him for just 3 months. The one before that left law altogether. You need to report him. She looked at me like I was suggesting she fly to the moon. To who, Ethan? The other partners who have protected him for years? HR, who he probably has in his pocket? The legal world is still a boys' club, especially at firms like Blackwell. I sat beside her, fighting back the rage building inside me. Then leave, find another firm. And tell them what? That I couldn't hack it at Blackwell? That I'm running from the first challenge in my career? She shook her head. Besides, I'm working on the Westfield merger, a career-making case. I can't walk away from that. So what's your plan? Just endure his harassment? I'll handle it, she said with a determination I'd seen carry her through law school. I'll keep things strictly professional, never be alone with him, document everything. He'll eventually lose interest and move on to someone else. I wanted to argue further, but the set of her jaw told me she'd made up her mind. This was Mel's way. Face problems head on, never show weakness, never back down. Just promise me you'll be careful, I said finally, and keep me in the loop. Every comment, every text, every inappropriate look. I promise, she replied, leaning her head on my shoulder. It'll be fine. I'm handling it. But as the next few weeks unfolded, it became increasingly clear that Sanders wasn't someone who could be handled through conventional means. His harassment followed a calculated pattern. First came casual compliments that walked the line of professional appropriateness. Then, accidental physical contact. A hand on her shoulder that lingered too long, brushing against her in the hallway, standing too close during conversations. He called me into his office today to discuss the Westfield brief, Mel told me one evening in early October. He closed the door, which he never used to do. Then he sat next to me on the couch instead of behind his desk. What did you do? I kept standing, pretended I didn't notice, said I needed to reference something on my laptop and moved to the conference table. She sighed. He got the message, but he wasn't happy about it. The next day, she texted me from work. He just told me my due diligence on the Westfield financials was sloppy and reassigned part of my workload to Brad. Brad, who couldn't find his way out of a paper bag with a map and a flashlight. It was retaliation, pure and simple. And it was just the beginning. The harassment escalated methodically, as if following a playbook. Late-night emails about urgent work matters that somehow always included personal questions or comments on her appearance. Then the invitations, drinks to discuss a case, dinner to review strategy, weekend mentoring sessions at his Hamptons house. He asked about you today, Mel said one night, her voice casual but her eyes watchful. Wanted to know if we were serious. What did you tell him? That we're engaged. She twisted the simple diamond ring on her finger, a recent purchase we'd been saving for. Nothing to do with Sanders. He seemed disappointed, said marriage was overrated and that young attorneys should focus on their careers, not domestic distractions. Charming, I muttered. The next day, Mel came home with news that made my blood run cold. He reassigned my paralegal today, she said, dropping her keys in the bowl by our door. Said I'd be working directly with him on the Westfield case from now on. That's bad, I said, understanding the implications immediately. It gets worse. He scheduled a strategy meeting in his office. Tonight, at 8:30, just the two of us. The clock on our kitchen wall read 6:17 p.m. You're not going, I said flatly. If I don't, I'll be off Westfield tomorrow morning. She ran her hands through her hair, a rare display of agitation. This case goes to trial in 3 weeks. I've put everything into it. Mel, he's trying to... I know exactly what he's trying to do, she snapped, then immediately softened. I'm sorry. It's not you I'm angry at. An idea struck me. What if I came with you? Just showed up at the office? Her eyes widened. You'd do that? Of course I would. I'll say I was in the area. Thought I'd take you to dinner after your meeting. Nothing confrontational, just my presence. For the first time in weeks, I saw a real relief in her face. That might actually work. He's too careful to try anything with a witness nearby. And so our impromptu sting operation was born. I arrived at the Blackwell building at 8:15 p.m., told security I was meeting my wife, and took the elevator to the 47th floor. The reception area was dark, but I could see light spilling from offices down the hall. I followed the sound of voices until I found them. Sanders and Mel in his corner office. The Manhattan skyline glittering behind them through floor-to-ceiling windows. His office was exactly what you'd expect. Leather furniture, law books on built-in shelves, framed newspaper articles about his biggest wins. Sanders was standing too close to Mel, one hand on the small of her back as they looked at documents spread across his desk. She was leaning away subtly, maintaining what little professional distance she could. I knocked on the open door. Hey, honey. They both looked up. Mel's relief was immediate and visible. Sanders' expression flashed from annoyance to calculation to forced congeniality in the span of seconds. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Mel moved away from Sanders and toward me. "Thought I'd surprise you, take you to dinner after your meeting." I extended my hand to Sanders. "Ethan Parker, I don't think we've been formally introduced." His handshake was firm to the point of aggressive. "Craig Sanders, your wife is a tremendous asset to our firm." "She's incredible," I agreed, holding his gaze a beat longer than comfortable. "I'm lucky to have her." "We were just finishing up," Mel said, already gathering her things. "I'll email you my notes on the Greenspan deposition tomorrow morning, Craig." Something dark flickered behind Sanders' perfect smile. "Actually, there were a few more strategy points I wanted to discuss. Perhaps we could continue over dinner?" "You're welcome to join us, of course," he added to me, clearly hoping I'd decline. "That sounds great," I replied cheerfully. "I've heard so much about the Westfield case." The dinner was excruciating. Sanders dominated the conversation with legal war stories, barely disguised boasts about his influence, and thinly veiled probes into our relationship. I matched him drink for drink, never dropping my friendly facade, while communicating clearly through every look and gesture that I knew exactly what game he was playing. When we finally escaped around 11 p.m., Mel was visibly exhausted. "Thank you," she said once we were in a taxi heading home. "I don't think you realize what you just prevented." "I think I have a pretty good idea," I replied, my forced cheerfulness evaporating. "He's not even subtle, Mel. The way he looks at you—" "Like I'm property," she finished. "Something to be acquired. This can't continue." "It won't," she promised. "I just need to make it through the Westfield trial, then I can request a transfer to another department." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe there was a way through this that wouldn't cost Mel the career she'd worked so hard to build. But Sanders had other plans. 2 days later, Mel came home from work with the look of someone who'd been punched in the gut. "He took me off Westfield," she said, dropping her briefcase by the door. "Effective immediately." "What? Why?" "Official reason? Concerns about my grasp of the nuances in the case." Her laugh was hollow. "Unofficial reason? I wouldn't have dinner alone with him." "Did he say that?" "Not explicitly. He's too smart for that. But as I was leaving his office, he said, 'Perhaps you should reconsider your priorities, Melanie. Some opportunities don't come around twice.'" The injustice of it made my blood boil. "That's textbook retaliation. You need to report him." "And have my entire legal career defined by being a whistleblower?" She shook her head. "Even if they believe me, which isn't guaranteed, I'd be labeled difficult or not a team player. Law firms would see me as a liability." She was right, and we both knew it. The legal profession talks a good game about ethics and justice. But when it comes to protecting its own power structures— "So what now?" I asked. "Now I do document review for the next 6 months until I can transfer or find another position." Her voice was steady, but I could see the defeat in her eyes. That night, as Mel slept beside me, I lay awake making plans. If she couldn't fight Sanders directly without risking her career, maybe there was another way. An approach that wouldn't trace back to her, but would still expose the truth. The next morning, I started my investigation. Sanders had been at Blackwell for 15 years, and before that at 2 other prestigious firms. If he had a pattern of behavior with Mel, chances were she wasn't his first victim. I began by creating a spreadsheet of every female associate who had worked directly under Sanders during his time at Blackwell. LinkedIn was my primary source, but I also scoured legal journals, firm newsletters, and court records where Sanders was listed as counsel. I cross-referenced these names against current firm directories to see who had left and when. The pattern was striking. Of the 27 women who had worked directly under Sanders in the past decade, only 3 still worked at Blackwell. The others had scattered, some to other firms, some to corporate legal departments, government positions, or out of law altogether. Using a burner email account, I reached out to all 24 former associates with a carefully worded message. Subject: confidential research on workplace dynamics at top NYC law firms. I am conducting confidential research on mentor-mentee relationships at prestigious law firms. If you have worked with Craig Sanders at Blackwell Harding, I would appreciate your insights on your professional experience. All responses will be kept strictly confidential. This is not for publication or litigation purposes. I am gathering information to understand certain workplace dynamics. Within 48 hours, I received 11 responses. 8 were polite refusals, ranging from brief, not interested replies to longer explanations about having moved on from that phase of their careers. But 3 women, Jessica Chen, Eleanor Washington, and Paige Donnelly, expressed cautious interest, each requesting more information about my research and my motivations. Taking a calculated risk, I replied with more honesty. My interest in this topic stems from concern for a current Blackwell associate experiencing inappropriate behavior from a senior partner. If this resonates with your experience, I believe sharing information could help prevent this pattern from continuing. Jessie, responded almost immediately. I don't know who you are, but if you're talking about who I think you're talking about, we should meet in person. Some things shouldn't be in writing. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan's legal district. Jessie arrived precisely on time, her wary eyes scanning the room before she approached my table. Before we start, she said, sliding into the seat across from me, I need to know who you really are and what this is really about. I decided complete honesty was the only approach. My name is Ethan Parker. My wife Melanie is a first-year associate at Blackwell Harding. Craig Sanders has been sexually harassing her, and now he's retaliating because she won't sleep with him. Jessie didn't look surprised. What shocked me was her immediate, visible relief. Oh, thank God, she breathed. It's happening again, and someone's finally doing something about it. She ordered coffee, then told me her story. She'd worked under Sanders for 14 months, 3 years earlier. The same pattern Mel was experiencing. Mentorship that gradually morphed into inappropriate comments, unwanted touching, professional isolation, and finally blatant propositions. The first time he touched me inappropriately was during a firm holiday party, she recalled, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. He put his hand on my lower back, then gradually slid it down until it was definitely on my ass. When I moved away, he laughed and said, Just checking if you're as firm as your legal arguments. Did anyone see it? I asked. Everyone and no one, she replied bitterly. That's his genius. He does these things in plain sight, but in ways that can be dismissed as accidental or misinterpreted, and he's careful about witnesses. The really explicit stuff happens behind closed doors. The really explicit stuff. My stomach turned at the implication. The worst was during a deposition prep in Philadelphia, Jessie continued. The firm put us up at the Four Seasons. Around midnight, he called my room, said he was having trouble with some exhibits and needed my help. Like an idiot, I went to his suite. She took a shaky breath. He answered the door in a bathrobe, said he'd been in the shower when he noticed a problem with our key witnesses statement. When I tried to leave, he blocked the door, told me my performance review was coming up, and he was still deciding whether I had partner potential. What did you do? I told him I had food poisoning and was about to throw up. He moved pretty quickly after that. She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I barricaded myself in my room for the rest of the night. The next day, he acted like nothing had happened. But when we got back to New York, everything changed. Cases reassigned. Performance reviews tanked. Partners who used to praise my work suddenly finding fault with everything I did. Did you report him? To the boys' club that runs Blackwell? To HR, which exists to protect the firm, not its employees? She shook her head. I tried to stick it out, but eventually I couldn't take it anymore. I left and took a massive pay cut at a smaller firm. How many others do you think there have been? At least a dozen that I know of. She pulled out her phone. We have a group chat, believe it or not. Survivors of Sanders. Darkly funny name, but that's what we are. Survivors. My pulse quickened. Would they be willing to share their stories? Anonymously? Maybe. She studied me carefully. What exactly are you planning? I outlined my emerging idea. Anonymous testimonials from multiple women, revealing a pattern of behavior too consistent to dismiss. No names, no lawsuits, just truth, made public in a way that couldn't be ignored. It's risky, Jessie admitted, but I'm so tired of carrying this secret. And if it helps your wife, she nodded decisively. I'm in, and I'll talk to the others. Over the next week, I met with 5 former Sanders victims. Their stories followed the same disturbing pattern, but each had unique, stomach-turning details. Paige described how Sanders had manipulated her into a mentor-mentee relationship, then used her family's financial troubles against her. My mother was sick. I needed the job, the health insurance. He knew that. He'd say things like, "You know, associates who show proper appreciation for partner guidance tend to get larger bonuses." Isha recalled being trapped in Sanders' office late at night. He locked the door, told me we needed to clear the air about the tension between us, said he could feel my attraction to him and that it was perfectly natural for young associates to develop feelings for their mentors. Candace had the most disturbing story. "He drugged my drink at a firm retreat," she said, her voice steady but her hands shaking. "I started feeling dizzy, disoriented. He offered to help me to my room. I don't remember much after that, just flashes. I woke up in my hotel bed alone, fully clothed but with my underwear missing. When I confronted him the next day, he showed me photos on his phone. Nothing explicit, just me looking drunk, hanging on him. He said if I ever accused him of anything, he'd show everyone how I really behave at firm events." Ellie, had left Blackwell just 9 months earlier. She'd kept meticulous records, screenshots of inappropriate texts, a journal of every incident, even a voice memo Sanders had left while clearly intoxicated, suggesting she join him in his hotel room during a conference. "I was building evidence," she explained, showing me her documentation. "I thought about filing a complaint with the Bar Association, but then I saw what happened to women who spoke out against powerful men in law firms. Their careers destroyed, branded as troublemakers, blackballed from decent positions." "What if you could share this evidence without risk to your career?" I asked. "Anonymously, but effectively." Ellie hesitated. "I've been trying to put this behind me." "I understand," I said quickly, "but if we don't stop him, there will be more Melanies," she finished. "More women forced to choose between their careers and their dignity." She squared her shoulders. "Yes, I'll share what I have. But I want my identity protected, and I want to know exactly how you plan to use it." By the end of the week, I had gathered evidence from 7 former Blackwell associates, screenshots of inappropriate texts, emails with suggestive comments, detailed accounts of Sanders' pattern of behavior. But documentation alone wouldn't be enough. We needed to package it in a way that would resonate emotionally and couldn't be easily dismissed. That's when I had the idea for the videos. I reached out to my friend Ravi, a documentary filmmaker, who had access to professional equipment. We set up a makeshift studio in his Brooklyn apartment. Black backdrop, professional lighting, good microphones. The women would come one by one, sit in shadow with their voices digitally altered, and tell their stories in their own words. The night before our first recording session, I finally told Mel the full extent of my investigation. "You did what?" she asked, stunned, as I showed her the evidence I'd compiled. "I found others, Mel. Women who went through exactly what you're going through. Sanders has been doing this for years, and the firm has been protecting him. And these women are willing to speak out? Publicly? Anonymously," I clarified. "No names, no identifying details. Just their stories, which together create a pattern that can't be ignored." Mel paced our small living room, her legal mind processing every angle. "This is incredibly risky," she finally said, "for everyone involved. Riskier than letting Sanders continue? Than watching your career get derailed because you won't sleep with him? Than knowing he'll just move on to the next young associate when he's done with you?" She stopped pacing. "You've already set this in motion, haven't you?" "First recording session is tomorrow," I admitted, "but nothing happens without your okay. These women are doing this for you, Mel, because they wish someone had done it for them." She was quiet for a long moment, conflict playing across her face. Then with a deep breath, she nodded. "I want to meet them first, all of them, face to face." The meeting happened the next evening in our apartment. Jesse, Ellie, Paige, and 2 others who had joined our coalition, Aisha and Candace. 6 women whose careers had been impacted by one predatory man, sharing their stories over wine and takeout. The atmosphere was tense at first. These women didn't know each other, despite having worked at the same firm. Sanders had been careful to keep his victims isolated. "It's eerie," Aisha said after several stories had been shared, "listening to all of you. It's like we all dated the same abusive boyfriend. He has a system, Paige confirmed. Start with professional interest. Isolate from colleagues. Escalate physical contact gradually. Offer career opportunities contingent on private meetings. Retaliate if rejected. Classic predator methodology, Candace added. She left law after her experience with Sanders and was now a therapist specializing in workplace trauma. He's refined his technique over years. You know what's most disturbing? Ellie said. It's not just that he's a predator, it's that the entire firm is structured to enable him. Everyone knows. The other partners, HR, even some of the more senior associates, they see it happening and they do nothing? Because he brings in the money, Jesse added bitterly. 20 million in billables last year, according to Above the Law. That buys a lot of blind eyes. Mel, who had been mostly listening, finally spoke. Why didn't any of you report him? The room went quiet. I did, Jesse said softly. To HR. They said they'd look into it. 2 weeks later, I was transferred to the tax department, a professional dead end. 6 months after that, I was let go during restructuring. I tried talking to a female partner I trusted, Ellie added. She told me Sanders was old school, and I should toughen up if I wanted to succeed in corporate law. I considered a lawsuit, Aisha said, met with an employment attorney and everything. He told me it would be my word against Sanders, that it would take years, cost a fortune, and likely end with a small settlement and an NDA that would prevent me from ever discussing it. So you all just left? Mel asked, no judgment in her voice, just a need to understand. We survived, Paige corrected gently. We protected ourselves the only way we could. But now together, maybe we can do more than survive. Maybe we can stop him. The atmosphere in the room shifted, from shared trauma to shared purpose. All right, Mel said, straightening her shoulders. Let's make these videos count. But we need to be smart about this. Sanders has survived for 15 years because he's careful. He'll fight back, and he'll fight dirty. That's why anonymity is crucial, I emphasized. No names, no specific dates or cases that could identify you. Just the pattern of behavior. And what's the goal here? Jesse asked. What do we hope to achieve? Ideally, Sanders fired, blackballed from the legal community, Ellie said immediately. Realistically, enough public pressure that Blackwell can't keep protecting him. What about the firm itself? Candace questioned. Shouldn't they be held accountable too? One battle at a time, Mel advised. Sanders first, the systemic issues next. Over the next 3 days, we recorded their testimonies. Each woman told her story in her own words, with specific examples of Sanders' behavior. We were careful. No direct accusations of criminal conduct. No claims we couldn't substantiate. Everything phrased as personal experience rather than fact. The stories were powerful, emotional, and infuriating. Sanders had wielded his power like a weapon, targeting women who were vulnerable, ambitious, or simply in his path. He destroyed careers, shattered confidence, and created lasting trauma, all while being celebrated as a legal genius. Mel's testimony was the shortest but perhaps the most powerful, as she was still at the firm, still dealing with Sanders' retaliation in real time. I came to Blackwell Harding because I believed in the law as a tool for justice, she said, her silhouetted figure stark against the black backdrop. What I've experienced has nothing to do with law or justice. It's about power and what happens when that power goes unchecked. Ravi edited the videos, adding subtle background music, polishing the audio, ensuring the anonymity protections were rock solid. The final product was 43 minutes long, professional, measured, and devastating. We also created a website, thesilentpartner.org, where we uploaded all the evidence, screenshots of texts, emails, with identifying information redacted, the timeline of Sanders' predatory behavior across 15 years, and a secure contact form for other victims. The night before launch, our coalition gathered in our living room. The mood was a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Once we do this, there's no going back, I warned. Are we all prepared for the potential fallout? One by one, they nodded. What if it doesn't work? Aisha asked the question we'd all been avoiding. What if people don't believe anonymous testimonies? What if the firm just weathers the storm and Sanders continues? Then at least we tried, Ellie said firmly. At least we didn't stay silent. And we have contingency plans, Mel added. She'd become increasingly involved in the strategy, her legal mind identifying potential pitfalls and solutions. If the anonymous approach doesn't generate enough pressure, we escalate. More women, more evidence, more specific accusations. And if that fail, Paige pressed, then we go nuclear, Jesse said grimly. Direct accusations, names attached, potential lawsuits, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. Mel took a deep breath, squeezed my hand and said, do it. I clicked publish. Then we implemented phase 2. Using anonymous accounts, we posted links to the video and website on key platforms. Reddit communities for lawyers, law students, and workplace harassment survivors Twitter, tagging legal influencers and journalists who covered the Me Too movement LinkedIn in comments on Blackwell Harding's corporate posts, anonymous tips to legal blogs and publications. Then we waited. The first sign that our plan was working came less than 3 hours later. AboveTheLaw.com, a popular legal blog, published a post titled Bombshell Allegations, Hit Prestigious NYC Firm, Anonymous Videos Allege Pattern of Sexual Harassment. By midnight, the video had over 15,000 views. The silent partner was trending in legal Twitter circles. Reddit threads analyzing the allegations had hundreds of comments, many speculating about which firm and partner were involved, some correctly identifying Blackwell Harding and Sanders based on specific details in the testimonies. The next morning, Bloomberg Law ran a story, Anonymous Harassment Claims Shake Manhattan Legal Circles. They didn't name names, but they quoted sources familiar with the matter who confirmed the allegations concerned a top litigator at a prestigious Madison Avenue firm. Mel went to work as usual, texting me updates throughout the day. 8:47 a.m. Atmosphere is weird, lots of hushed conversations. 10:15 a.m. Just overheard two partners arguing about getting ahead of the story. They stopped when they saw me. 11:32 a.m. Sanders just stormed past my office. Looks like he's been awake all night. 1:22 p.m. Sanders is holed up with managing partners and what looks like a crisis PR team. 2:15 p.m. Someone anonymously posted printouts of the website in both attorney lounges. They were removed within minutes, but not before everyone saw them. 3:40 p.m. HR just sent a firm-wide email about recommitment to a respectful workplace and zero tolerance for harassment. Timing seems significant. At 4:17 p.m., she texted again. Emergency all-hands meeting called for 5 p.m. Required attendance. I paced our apartment, waiting for news. The other women were equally on edge, our group text buzzing with updates and speculation. At 5:43 p.m., Mel finally texted, Sanders has taken a voluntary leave of absence, pending an internal investigation. Managing partner gave a whole speech about firm values and taking allegations seriously, even anonymous ones. Everyone knows exactly what this is about, but no one is saying it directly. Then a minute later, I'm trying to keep a straight face, but watching Sanders clean out his desk while security stands by is honestly the highlight of my legal career so far. That night, we opened a bottle of champagne with the whole group. This is just the beginning, Jesse cautioned as glasses were raised. Firms like Blackwell have weathered scandals before. True, Ellie acknowledged, but we have something they don't expect. What's that? Aisha asked. Ellie smiled grimly. More videos, more women. I've heard from 3 others since we went live. Former Sanders victims who want to share their stories. And I've received 7 messages through the website contact form, I added. Not all about Sanders. Apparently he's not the only predator at Blackwell Harding. Mel, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. We need to be careful. This could easily spin out of our control. Maybe that's what needs to happen, Candace suggested. Maybe the entire system needs to be exposed. Not just one man, but the culture that protects men like him. But we never got the chance to debate our next move. Because at 7:23 a.m. the next morning, Mel's phone rang. It was Alan Blackwell, the managing partner himself. He wants to see me in his office. Immediately, she said, her face pale as she hung up. That's not good, I said, immediately concerned. What if they figured out you're involved? I don't think so. He sounded strange, not angry, almost panicked. She was already pulling on her work clothes. I need to go. I'm coming with you, I insisted. No, that would look suspicious. I need to play this cool. She kissed me quickly. I'll text you updates. The next 3 hours were agonizing. Mel's texts were cryptic and infrequent. 8:15 a.m. in Blackwell's office, with full executive committee, no Sanders. 8:47 a.m. They're asking about the videos. Playing dumb. 9:23 a.m. Something's happening. Lots of urgent calls. Looking at me suspiciously. 10:04 a.m. Crisis meeting with PR team. They're panicking about something new. And then, most alarmingly, silence. I called, no answer. Texted, no response. At 11:30 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I was about to head to Blackwell Harding when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Mel, using colleague's phone. Sanders showed up drunk, making scene in lobby. Come now. I grabbed my jacket and ran. By the time I reached the Blackwell building, a small crowd had gathered outside. Security guards were blocking the entrance. But through the glass doors, I could see commotion in the lobby. I pushed my way through, flashing my ID at security. My wife's inside. Melanie Parker. She works here. The guard hesitated, then nodded. Be careful, sir. Situation's volatile. And that's when I saw it. The scene described at the beginning of this story. Craig Sanders, New York's most celebrated attorney, coming completely unhinged in the marble lobby of the firm that bore his name on the letterhead. I'll destroy you, both of you, he screamed, spittle flying as security restrained him. You think this is over? I made this firm. I know where the bodies are buried. Mel stood nearby, surrounded by partners and HR representatives, watching Sanders implode with an expression of stunned fascination. When he spotted us, his rage focused to a laser point. You think you're so clever with your videos, your anonymous testimonies? I know it was you. As the guards dragged him toward the elevator, Sanders continued his tirade, threats and obscenities echoing through the lobby. Partners, associates, and staff who had witnessed the spectacle stood frozen, smartphones discreetly capturing the downfall of New York's most notorious legal rainmaker. When the elevator doors finally closed on his contorted face, I made my way to Mel. You okay? Her professional mask slipped just enough for me to see the mixture of relief, vindication, and lingering fear beneath. I will be, she whispered, then straightening her shoulders and adjusting her perfectly tailored blazer. Let's get out of here. As we pushed through the revolving doors, a partner, Barbara Chen, one of the few women in leadership, caught up with us. Melanie, she said quietly, take the rest of the day, but please be in my office at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Am I? Mel couldn't finish the question. No, Barbara assured her. You're not in trouble. Quite the opposite, in fact. We need to talk about your future at the firm. The fallout was swift and far-reaching. Videos of Sanders' meltdown circulated widely on social media within hours. Legal blogs ran stories with headlines like, The Fall of a Titan, and From Corner Office to Court-Ordered Therapy. The New York Times published a front-page article about toxic culture in prestigious law firms, using Blackwell Harding as its primary example. What we didn't know during Sanders' lobby meltdown was what had triggered it. Apparently that morning, the firm had received a letter from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. An anonymous tip had led them to investigate financial irregularities in Sanders' client billing practices. Preliminary evidence suggested he had been padding hours, double billing clients, and possibly misappropriating firm resources for personal use. The combination of sexual harassment allegations and potential financial fraud was too much for Blackwell Harding to ignore or contain. By the end of the day, they had issued a terse statement. Following serious allegations and an internal investigation, Craig Sanders is no longer associated with Blackwell, Harding, and Pierce, effective immediately. The firm is cooperating fully with all relevant authorities and remains committed to providing a safe, respectful workplace for all employees. Surprisingly, Blackwell Harding used the crisis as an opportunity for long overdue change. They hired Catherine Rivera, a respected employment attorney and workplace equality advocate, as their new chief ethics officer. They implemented a comprehensive overhaul of their harassment policies, including an independent review board to handle complaints. And Mel? Far from being punished for her association with the scandal, though her direct involvement remained officially unknown, She was transferred to the appellate division, a prestigious move that aligned with her long-term career goals, and assigned Barbara Chen as her new mentor. "We value your contribution to this firm," Barbara told her during their meeting, "and we recognize that recent events may have affected your experience here. We want to ensure you have the support and opportunities you deserve." The unspoken subtext was clear. "We know what Sanders did to you. We're sorry we didn't stop it sooner, and we're trying to make amends without admitting liability." 3 months after Sanders' public meltdown, our coalition of survivors had grown to include 17 women spanning his entire career. The website had evolved into a resource for harassment survivors across the legal profession, with attorneys from other firms coming forward with their own stories of abuse and retaliation. The New York Bar Association launched an investigation into cultural issues at top law firms, with a specific focus on power dynamics and harassment. Several firms preemptively announced new policies and training programs, eager to avoid becoming the next Blackwell-Harding case study. As for Sanders himself, the fallout was total. The DA's investigation into his financial practices expanded, revealing years of ethical violations. His marriage collapsed publicly when his wife filed for divorce, citing multiple infidelities with subordinates in her petition. His media commentary gigs disappeared overnight. His legal reputation, built over decades, was destroyed in weeks. Last I heard, he was teaching business ethics at a small community college upstate, living in a rented apartment and fighting to keep his law license. The New York Bar Association's disciplinary committee had opened formal proceedings against him, with disbarment a real possibility. One evening, about 6 months after everything had happened, Mel and I were having dinner at our favorite neighborhood restaurant when she suddenly went quiet, her eyes fixed on something over my shoulder. "What is it?" I asked, turning to look. There at the bar sat Craig Sanders, alone, nursing what was clearly not his first drink. His once immaculate appearance had deteriorated, unshaven, shirt wrinkled, the confident posture replaced by a defeated slump. He hadn't noticed us yet. For a moment, we both watched him in silence. "Should we leave?" I asked quietly. Mel considered, then shook her head. "No, we're not running from him anymore." As if sensing our attention, Sanders looked up. For a moment, confusion crossed his face, then recognition, then a complex mixture of emotions: shame, anger, bitterness. Our eyes locked across the restaurant. I tensed, ready for another confrontation. But to my surprise, Sanders simply nodded once, an acknowledgement, not a greeting, then turned back to his drink. "That's it?" I whispered to Mel. "No scene? No threats?" "He's beaten," she said simply. "He knows it." We finished our meal, paid the bill, and left without another interaction. As we walked home, Mel slipped her hand into mine. "You know what's strange?" she said after a while. "I expected to feel, I don't know, vindication, satisfaction, seeing him like that. And you don't?" "I feel nothing for him, just relief that he can't hurt anyone else." She squeezed my hand. "But I do feel something else, something unexpected." "What's that?" "Pride," she said simply. "Not just in taking down Sanders, but in being part of something bigger. Those women, Jessie, Ellie, all of them, they're incredible. They stood up not just for me, but for every woman who comes after us." "You're pretty incredible yourself," I told her. She smiled, the first genuine, unburdened smile I'd seen in months. "We did this together, all of us." Sometimes people ask if we have regrets about how we handled things, about the anonymous videos, the public exposure, the lives disrupted. I think about Mel, who no longer looks over her shoulder at work, about Jessie, who's mentoring young female attorneys on navigating toxic workplace dynamics, about Ellie, who recently made partner at her new firm, about all the women who've reached out to thank us for giving them the courage to tell their own stories. And I remember something Candace said during one of our early meetings. "Predators like Sanders thrive in darkness. The most powerful weapon against them is light. We shine that light, and while the legal world is far from perfect, it's a little brighter now than it was before." Sanders wanted to control my wife through the bed, to make her career contingent on her body. Now he doesn't even control himself, and that's a lesson worth teaching.